Welcome to Finance Friday, and I am David Worrell, your DIY CFO. I've got a special guest with me today. We will also explore some new territory today by talking about U.S. government grants. We are going to hear from Dan Flaherty, and Dan is first you have to know he's a hell of a nice guy because he's not a grant expert who does grants applications for a living all the time. He frankly doesn't make any money by doing grant applications. His real business is as a sales and sales management consultant. He has dozens of clients, maybe hundreds of clients out there where he's running the sales department for these folks. And as a small business consultant, he sees all kinds of crazy stuff going on that he's going to tell us about. But more than that, I think you can also know that you can trust Dan. He's worked for General Electric for several years, Intel for several years, Johnson Controls. So he comes out of the Fortune 500 industries, but is now firmly entrenched in small business and has been advising small business clients. So Dan, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit more.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me today as well. So again, full disclosure, and I loved how David put it in the chat session here. I'm not a government employee. I don't work for the grant organizations in any way. So obviously your logical question is, what in the world's a sales guy telling us about grants for, right? So David's correct. I worked in Fortune 50 my whole career running large sales organizations for large companies, and decided to retire and then form a small business myself. My team is at any given time running sales departments for dozens and dozens and dozens of small businesses. So what that gives us is a unique perspective into many companies at the same time. So we get to see, all their warts and what's working well. And one of the things that, quite frankly, we stumbled upon was this world of grants, or really incentives and resources available to the small business community. I had no idea about this area because I came from Fortune 50, right? We didn't worry about these things. But what we see every day in small business is, they have cash flow problems, they have growth problems. It's all the economics of really what entrepreneurs go through today. And of course, I'm going through it as well. And, connecting the dots, found ways through programs that exist. They're not that well publicized, and we'll get into that, but programs that exist that really are, their purpose is to help small business. And our goal today is to give an education session around that. This is more of a seminar, a public service announcement. The only reason why I love discussing this is because I've seen it work so well in so many companies. So what you're going to hear from me today, I'll go into a little bit of detail on each grant, really what it's meant for. But then I'm going to talk about very specific examples where we've seen our clients use the grant. And hopefully that jogs a little, brain cells into, maybe this can apply to me in this situation. We're literally going to talk probably about 20, 30 examples today. So I am sure this audience will have a few that resonate well with them. All of us are in the same boat. Most CEOs have no idea that these exist. And the reason behind that is there's no billboard on your local interstate that advertises these programs. And in fact, many of them can't advertise by law. So today we're going to help give answers to these common questions on this slide that we all are in that boat. So what do I hear from CEOs all the time? Why haven't I heard of these? How and where do I apply for them? Who is my resource for the grants? Who has experience with these, right? I don't want to be the guinea pig. Who's done it before? How are they being used? So we'll probably, give 20, 30 examples today. And then always a fun one, right? Is the government really here to help? So I'll get into that later on because quite frankly, it does seem in working with these teams that deliver the grants, it may feel like the DMV a little bit here and there. But, it is what it is. The programs have financial benefit and some even have resource benefit, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Dan, I would have said the government is never here to help and there is no such thing as a free lunch. But then the PPP and the
Yeah.
ERTC and the disaster loan, I have a whole new outlook on money from Uncle Sam these days. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, and these go back, almost a decade on some of them. So it's even pre-pandemic. Like their intent has really gone back many years. It's not pandemic related in any way. All right, so to tee these up, business owners have one or more of these challenges on the top of this slide. Yet, like I said, they're unaware of the incentives and resources and programs that are in place to solve these problems. So, how many of us are experiencing issues with hiring today? One of the most challenging hire environments I've ever seen in my career of over 30 years. Retaining workforce. Just this morning, one of my clients lost their key salesperson. So I've got some work to do today. But retaining great people, right? Are you growing and in expansion mode where you're either adding to a factory, adding more shifts to a factory? Do you want to grow export sales? Do you want to do business more in Canada, more in Mexico, more globally? Are you in the process of relocating, either setting up a satellite facility or actually moving headquarters in, or potential threat of foreign competition? Is there a new disruptor in your industry that you're a little worried about? And then finally, another one is a great one. How do I increase the skills and competencies of my employees so that they want to stay with me, right? There's absolutely a loyalty component in workforce today. And if your company has the culture and DNA to continuously grow and develop your employees, they absolutely do end up sticking around longer with you, or at least give you a heads up when they get another offer. Which in December, I had a client that had 6 factory workers come in all at the same time, all with offers. So we had to sit down. We kept them because they had that loyalty with us because we did a lot to develop their skill sets. So we'll talk about grants today that solve all the business or help solve all the business problems on this slide. So I'm sure many of you have similar challenges. So there are grants that address employee issues around training, hiring, and onboarding. We'll get into that. If you don't like your revenue for any reason, there are wonderful grants around addressing foreign competition, bringing new products to market, exporting sales. And then finally, if you're really in growth mode, if you're in hiring mode, capital projects, there are incentives and resources that will help you get nice economics around those incentives for expanding production, relocation of facilities.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to say this dovetails really nicely with something that we've talked about last month, which is the work opportunity tax credit. So you can get tax credits for hiring unskilled laborers, and then you can get a grant for skilling them up and educating them and training them into what you want them to be.
That's right.
Pretty good stuff.
All right. So let's get into the first grant. It's titled the Incumbent Workforce Training Grant. Its purpose is to help retain your existing valuable workforce. The way it's done is through training and development or upskilling programs. How do you find it? Honestly, the best way, Google incumbent workforce training for your county or your state. So I have a picture here of the North Carolina website for the Department of Commerce. Right on their website, you get to see a nice button for the grants. There is a grant resource, government employee, not me, that is there to help you apply. You apply directly with them. So there's no third-party intermediary. I know for a lot of the other programs like ERC, there was oftentimes a third party. That is not the case in this grant specifically. All right, let's talk a little bit about the grant and its use. First of all, the funding, it's tens of thousands of dollars. Each county will be different. It's a federal program delivered through the counties. So it has a lot to do with your county's, commerce, if you will. Larger counties will get more than smaller counties, but I've never seen it be less than tens of thousands of dollars. And it is funding for training programs that you design. Okay. So this grant team is not going to come into your business and say, here's our training program, go do it. You have to have one, but they will pay for the execution of that. Some examples of where my team has worked with small businesses and they've used this funding. Number one, train the entire sales team on your sales process or your sales tool. So if you have a CRM in place, maybe it's not working so well, team needs to use it better, they'll come in and pay for that training. If you have sales meetings, say annual sales meetings, and if you do training in that sales meeting, then they will fund that sales meeting because of the development going on with the workforce. If you want to do some leadership training with your leadership team, right? True leadership development. That is a popular use of this grant because they know how portable leaders are in businesses. So their goal is to keep that employee employed in that county, right? So that's really what's going on behind the scenes is the county doesn't want to lose workforce to go to another county. So they want to retain them there. So your business leaders are very mobile, very portable. Make sure you're training them well and treating them well. This is a great way to fund a program that does that. This is a popular one. I had a furniture company that found a new way to spray lacquer on chairs. And there was this new tool in our factory that did that really well. Grant team came in, funded the entire training program on that new tool. And all of our shifts got to be quite expert at that new tool. So good way to increase the skills of your workforce. And then finally, this is always a popular one, had a client really get certified on ISO 9001. Very impressive, whole business, very daunting, large program, as you can imagine. But what a great way to have some funding behind that, even though the workload was quite advanced.
That's awesome. Dan, a lot of your examples have talked about manufacturing, real physical labor work. Does that apply to, I'm thinking about myself, right? I've got a couple dozen accountants. We want to implement a new CRM system this year. We want to implement new software tools. Does it equally apply to service businesses as well as hard stuff?
It does. Yeah, we have a commercial real estate broker who is building organizations in a very large geography. And so the skills and development when you hire brokers, making sure that they know your tools and processes and your procedures, that's a great way to bring them into the organization.
Dang, that's crazy good. All right. Tell us about on the job.
Okay, so that grant number one was about your existing workforce. This grant is about new workforce. So very distinct. The purpose of this is to build your critical workforce. It focuses around hiring and onboarding. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time because how this grant is used is really in two ways. One is to find the person, and then the grant team sticks around to then fund their onboarding and fund their wages while they're being onboarded. So this is a great way to bring skilled, unskilled workforce into your company and potentially have the government pay their wages. Just phenomenal on this. So here you see a brochure. This is the county I live in. This is their brochure. Every county is going to probably have their own unique brochure. How do you find this again? It's through the same it's the same way. It's the Department of Commerce, but it's a different grant team. So look, my organization has spent a lot of time meeting all the who's who in the zoo representatives around this because there are many, right? It's the government. It's a little complex. Maybe it's not always so streamlined. There are a lot of people, and it really does matter who you have to know who your local representatives are. But this is through the Department of Commerce. Let's get into on the next slide what this grant objective is. Again, tens of thousands of dollars for wages and training programs to ensure that they're successfully retained. So the onboarding is pretty important here, and I'll get into that in a second. What's interesting about this grant is it's not only money. Most states, believe it or not, have a hiring portal, and candidates go on that hiring portal to find work. I was not aware of that from my state. That was an aha moment. For me as a business owner to use that portal, it doesn't cost me anything. So let's get into some examples where we've used that. We had a client hire their complete second shift in their production because we were growing. This client was in a rural county. Okay, there's not a lot of workforce in that rural county. So they're struggling finding workers. The state came in and introduced us to an entire pool of workforce. Quite frankly, we had no idea was out there. So it wasn't just money. It was a way to find and get access to talent that we didn't know existed. We were literally going to drive-thrus on restaurants and seeing if they were happy in their role as a drive-thru attendant to find factory workforce. That's how rural this county was. Well, again, it was an entire workforce we were not aware of. They connected us. It was a wonderful connection. We filled the entire second shift with the county's workforce. Because of that, they then came in, paid their salary while we were training them and onboarding them to be successful in their job. The interesting thing is you can post a job opening on that portal. So if you are posting today on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, name your favorite, you should also be posting on your county's or state's portal. Now, the important thing here is you need an onboarding program. Most clients we work with don't have one. We deliver one, and that's what the government loves to see. They're not going to just give you money and if you say, well, we'll do our best to train them. Look, I was in corporate America for a while. All the time, we would hire people, give them the employee handbook and say, good luck. That was the onboarding. That's not what the government's going to fund here. So you're going to need a pretty robust onboarding to make sure that new hire is retained.
Wow. My only experience with these state job boards is that they cater to people who are unemployed, right? It's a reemployment effort. And look, I know we all get unemployed for various reasons, but is that generally the pool? You're going to find people who don't have jobs now versus, as you were doing, driving through the drive-thru looking for people who are already employed. And you might get a different mix of workers based on that. Yeah,
true statement. I would say it depends on the state, David. I am sure there's variance state to state. The purpose of this grant absolutely is around employment, right? Yeah. So the unemployed workforce, oftentimes a skilled workforce in our experience. We have a situation, a retail application right now where we're trying to hire store managers, and there's wonderful skilled workforce out there that liked being on sabbatical for a while. Yeah. And now is ready to come back to work. So what's a great way to get access to all that talent? First, the portal.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Awesome.
Excellent. This is this is a very interesting one, different than the other two. The trade assistance grant is meant to combat existing foreign competition, or if you're afraid of foreign competition and there's some evidence there and you want to be proactive, then you will apply. The interesting thing about this one too is the trade assistance is managed through district. It's still a federal program delivered by districts through the university system. I have no idea how that happens. Here's the Southeast brochure. It's delivered through Georgia Tech. The Northeast is SUNY Albany. You can get with us to figure out your representative there. There is someone that's meant to hold your hand through this whole process as well. We've had a lot of influence on this grant. Here's the grant brochure for the Southeast. It's probably too small to see, but I circled it. The first bullet, the first use of this grant, sales and marketing. So, look, if you have a competitor, then your sales ears should be ringing, right? We work very closely with this grant organization across many clients. And hence they really promote our sales and marketing efforts to help combat foreign competition, right? That's the whole intent.
I noticed that cost accounting is actually one of the last bullet points.
That's right. Look, I'll get into an application here in a second, but we've used trade assistants to fund attorneys and lawyers to go buy our competitor. Again, they're not going to come in and say, here's the program, you got to do the trade assistance program. It's up to you to define how you want to use the money. You have to have a plan though, right? So let's get into, on the next slide, a couple examples of where I've seen it used. It's a pretty hefty grant, $150,000. They do have a sharing requirement. They want you to be invested in this initiative too. So that's a component of this one, pretty unique on this one. Interesting thing too, with Build Back Better, this was going to go up to $300,000. I was not aware that there were business incentives in Build Back Better. I thought it was mainly social programs, but there were. But still, it's 150, very lucrative. Here's how we've seen people use it. Put in place a sales process. Customize your sales CRM tool to make sure your sales process is working. If you do those things, you'll win more, right? And if you win more, you will beat the foreign competition. So that's a pretty popular use of that. I actually have 2 clients on this right now doing that exact bullet number 1, me personally. My advisors have multiple clients as well on bullet number 1. All right, bullet number 2 is wonderful. How can we go find new customers to potentially beat the competition, right? But not only find them, make sure we are successful winning them as new customers and not just calling them up and blowing the breeze, right? This grant specifically loves to see metrics. So you have to have an idea, but then they say all the time, show me the data, right? Prove it's working. So keep in mind system through a lot of these too. Third bullet, bring a brand new product to market. We have a half a dozen clients right now bringing a new product to market. They've said for many years, boy, I wish I could, make that thing. Or I've always wanted to do that in our industry, just have never had the funding. Well, here's your chance, because you will be a better U.S. competitor with this new innovation or new technology or new service. And they love that. They will help fund that project. Or if you want to find a brand new customer channel, if you're currently selling to distributors and you want to sell to contractors, I have a client right now utilizing this grant for that purpose. We're going to go sell to a different type of customer, and the government's helping pay for that. And then finally, if you have lead generation services, SEO campaigns or tools, that's a pretty popular one too. That's also on their brochure.
You mentioned that it's a shared expense. In your experience, is it 80-20, 50-50?
Always 50-50.
Oh, okay. So is 150 how much the state is going to put in, or is that the total of the share?
Total of the share.
So 75. Correct. So if I've got $75,000 to really roll out a whole new program, the state's going to double it, or the federal government's going to double it for me. Wow.
That's a great way to look at it. Think of it as you're paying half price. Yeah. Right. For anything you wanted to do, you're paying half price. And the leniency around this, the first 2 we spoke of, there has to be employment somewhere in the grant, right? Yeah. There has to be bodies. For this one, this is around programs. I mean, it's a strategy you come up with to create a program, and then they fund it by half.
Yeah. And tell us again, where does this one come from? Where does the application process live?
Yeah, delivered via districts and through the university system. So the best way to do that is Google Trade Assistance for your state. and it will most likely show you the district you're in, or reach out to us. I'll give you my contact information here at the end. We've worked with all of the organizations. We have great relationships with them.
That's amazing that the federal government uses colleges, universities to help distribute some of this aid to businesses. It's like this government academic business triumvirate here. Very strange, convoluted way to get you some money. Yeah, we'll take it. All right. Number 4, trade expansion. Oh, I love this. I've always wanted to have an export business and never quite got there. So tell me how this is going to get export.
So my father's a small business owner up in New Jersey, in fact, and he stumbled upon this. So I have to give him a lot of credit. This is North Carolina. I'm out of North Carolina. That's where my company's headquartered. This is North Carolina's brochure. The purpose of this program is to grow export revenue and presence. So think about your brand and awareness of your brand outside of America. I love this program for the same reason as the other one. It's not just money, it's resources to help. And I'll explain a little on examples on the next slide here. But think about it this way. It's almost like a lobbying organization on your behalf. Phenomenal state resources to help a small business go outside of America and grow revenue outside of America. Obviously, they don't want you to be relocated outside of America. It's about creating jobs in America. But by getting export sales, we obviously clearly do that. Your local SBA office delivers this one. And oftentimes, there's also a state organization because this program is quite large. The brochure here just shows a few examples of what North Carolina pays for. If you want to go to a trade show, they'll pay $3,000 for airfare, hotel, whatever, $5,000 for the booth. I mean, it's pretty interesting just to get your name out in a trade show, right? But it's obviously far beyond that.
I just want to know, I got to ask, if I want to start doing accounting someplace really nice, like let's say Paris or St. John, well, that's American.
Right.
The Grenadines in the Caribbean. They're going to pay for me to go down there now, right?
That's right. It's incredible.
All right. I'm there.
All right. So this one's great because it's tens of thousands of dollars a year. Okay. So it's not a one and done. Some of the other ones were one and dones on the program. This is something I believe intentionally the state just wants to continuously help you with. So it's pretty neat to see that. So they pay for activities and programs. So think of activities as, some of your travel to design to increase export sales. Let's get into some examples. Again, attend an international trade show, develop a sales strategy and a system to grow and measure export revenue. I had a client that didn't have any presence in Mexico or Canada. They came in and helped us put together tools and strategies to go try to be successful in those markets. Okay. They didn't stop there. They then paid for our brochures to be translated into French to be successful in Quebec. So that's bullet number 3.
Wow.
Bullet number 4. They helped us figure out the size of the market in those geographies we had no familiarity with. They did that for us. They have employees that do that for you. And then finally, we wanted to go to market via distributors. Guess what? They have resources that highlighted distributors in Canada that we should go interview to see if they would be a good fit for us. Okay. So many different ways where they come in, not just with money, but with resources and expertise and just, a true partner on that case. And I believe my father has also been invited to be on the board for the state to represent small businesses in Washington, D.C. So, I mean, just think about how much more they've gone beyond just handing over a check to help a small business owner. Pretty neat.
Very cool. I got to say, I've been on the other side of the table of this one. I've seen what governments can do to help the exports when foreign governments used to bring really customers to me in the United States. They were people looking to get into the US and they were hiring me to help them set up their offices here and do their accounting and do some of their sales, actually.
Yeah.
That was in a prior life, but man, the government trade people, the embassy people, the economic development people, they put on great shows. They have giant trade show booths that you take part in. It makes you look like you're first class all the way when you walk in with, five guys in blue government suits behind you.
Great point. We're going to end on this one. And this is, again, unique, really meant for businesses that are in growth mode. Okay. So some of those other grants we just spoke about, maybe your business is declining, maybe it's flat, maybe you have some struggles. This one's really meant for also companies that are in growth mode. A lot of times the government, through some of those other programs, likes to provide incentives to struggling companies to help them. They look at companies that are successful as, well, you don't need our help type thing, right? But turns out there are ways to help successful and growing companies as well. This is an organization I ran into, also located in Charlotte, but global. The purpose of these programs is to really maximize the amount of negotiated, and here's the word, discretional incentives for capital projects. Governments love companies coming into town and creating jobs. State representatives worry about that. Commerce departments worry about that. Any level in government is at some form or fashion going to worry about that. They also have access to funding to be able to reward that or make that happen. Honeywell moved their headquarters to Charlotte. One of the main objectives and reasons were the economic incentives that they got. Honeywell, right? So here's a wonderful organization. I have their website here. We've used them extensively to help you negotiate the due incentives. And they know the people. You don't have to know the people. And obviously they're professional, know how to negotiate, know what to negotiate for. This is a big one. There easily could be $100,000 to $1 million plus of incentives available to you on this program.
Dan, let me interrupt for just a second. This is not a cash back like a lot of the prior ones. This is not a check or help buying something so much as a deferral of taxes or a elimination of taxes sort of thing.
Both. So I literally have a client right now that just got approved. Then there's the first cash outlay is $300,000.
Wow. And, you mentioned Honeywell. So I think that of these kinds of government incentive programs being offered to the giant Fortune 100, do you see it happening for small companies? Great
point. The purpose of this organization is to help the non-Honeywell, the you and me.
Yeah.
Right. That's evergreen. So realize that there's federal, state, as well as utility incentives. So that was an aha moment for my client as well. They were not pursuing utility incentives, would have never known to do that.
Yeah.
Evergreen comes in and helps them really understand what's available to them, right?
Wow.
So how have we used this? Move or expand a headquarters to a new location. Even if you want to, second bullet, open up a satellite office. There are incentives. People are going to compete for your location. Think about it that way. Expanding a manufacturing plant. I have a client, we have grown quite nicely. We kind of grew out of our existing manufacturing plant. We're going to build another one. So that's, we utilize this program to help pay for that. That was the $300,000 that we're getting before we even really start anything. If you want to increase production capacity, so expand your existing plant. Also had a client who's been talking about it for 20 years. I want to build a warehouse. We were full to the brim with raw material. Well, this was a wonderful way to get them off the center and get them to do that. And in the process, we also hired additional shift workers because, we could then grow out of our belt loop, if you will. So, just a few examples here on this one. Again, meant for growing companies, which many programs are not meant for. So these are kind of my final speaking points, little commentary. First thing I want to mention to everyone is look, there's no need to go at this alone. There's existing resources and proven testimonials to help you. Any of the examples I just described to you, I know who did it. I have their phone number, their name. If you want to speak directly to them, I would be more than happy to put you in touch with them. Our clients have had such a wonderful experience with these things that, just like me, they love promoting them. So you can talk to real business owners who have received money and have put these to great use. Okay. They're taxpayer dollars. All right. The programs are going to invest cautiously. Think a little bit about how the DMV works. That's a lot of these organizations. Therefore, number 2 is quite relevant. They don't like investing in companies that A, don't have a program, or B, have a kind of program, but they've never really seen it before. They love investing in programs that work. Hence, my organization has done quite well because our programs over 5 years have been proven successful. We always do a nice write-up to Washington, D.C. about the wonderful testimonial and great use of taxpayer dollars. So we get some good promo on that. And therefore, they have no issue funding it again, right? Because it's worked 100 times. Those are also the programs that are funded first, and they're funded very quickly. You can literally get funded within weeks. Relationships with your program representatives matter. Okay, so really know that person. Help bring in people that know this because their expertise matters as well. You don't want to fumble through this. It's a government program, right? With taxpayer dollars. Don't fumble through it. Number 3, every program is different, unfortunately, that I just described. They don't all end on the same date and start on this date. There are periods of the year where more money is available. It's kind of a use it or lose it every year. There's never been a year where it hasn't been funded by the federal budget, but who knows in the future, right? That's the disclaimer. You can always reapply, but here's my message: be in line. Just get in line. We've had so many clients get denied for one reason or another, and then one metric turned overnight. And much like some of the ERC, you choose your time periods on some of the metrics. So say one of your metrics all of a sudden goes negative, then you got you apply. You get approved. So just get in line at the moment, and especially know your representatives. Number 4 is probably most applicable of everything I've said today. What we've seen in small businesses, the programs don't even exist. There's nothing for the federal government to fund. So that's why organizations like mine come in with a program, because most of the time the business owners are too busy to have a program. So there's my personal contact information, my cell phone number, our email. I would love to answer any Q&A that you have as you digest this a little bit. Again, more than happy to put you in touch with business owners that have utilized this. Whatever we can do to help. This was our kind of feel-good moment for Q1 and helping the small business community. I hope that was helpful today, and really appreciated your time.
Awesome. I want to give you a standing ovation all by myself, Dan. This is really 5 areas of government help that I had never heard of. And you make it sound, I'll say easy. That might be going a little too far, but you make it sound straightforward. How about that?
Well, thank you.
We do have a lot of questions. You ready to dive into those?
Let's go.
Debbie wanted to know, do any of these apply to agriculture?
Yeah, great question. It's industry agnostic. The only one I could think of where we would have to dig in a little bit is the trade assistance. But in the case of agriculture, if your tooling and machinery that you own is, for example, suddenly more expensive than foreign competitors that are cheaper that are helping, potentially. I mean, look, they're quite lenient. The interesting thing is, again, they don't know your industry. And they don't even really know your business, right? So a lot of times that's where my organization comes in, is we're like the translator, if you will, because we know the government and we know how to translate well. Yeah. But yes, I've never had a client so I'm going to go out on a limb. My organization has never had a client not get a grant. And we've helped almost every industry you could possibly imagine.
Wow. That's amazing. All
I
right.
just jinxed myself, I'm sure. But
So I'm going to push a little bit here. A lot of the grants were growth, but also export. Is there anything specific for importers that you know of? Do any of these help people? So you mentioned, or you spoke with Veronica before the show started. She's in the medical industry. She's looking to import PPE and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
sure.
Anything for importers?
Yeah. Look, if your supply chain is overseas, I mean, that's irrelevant. As long as you're a U.S. registered company, then these grants are for U.S. small businesses, right? So that furniture example I gave you, we imported all of our furniture from Italy, everything. We did a little finished goods manufacturing, but everything seating, I mean, everything came from overseas, and we received almost all of the grants I just described today.
Very cool. All right, let's go to the Q&A box.
Ooh, can I answer Josephine's question?
Yeah, go for it.
I have 2 clients right now in the heating and air conditioning business. They both are under multiple grants. So yes, you would absolutely apply.
All right. And so here we go. Do we need to contact the county to get some of these grants? So
correct.
Let's just go into the little bit more specific. You described 5 different grants. They have 5 different ways of being distributed.
Right.
If I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, pretty much I should go to my local resources before I go to the Detroit, Michigan guy who
you bet.
Right.
Yep. Right. So in Mecklenburg County, Chris Miller distributes most of the employer grants.
Yeah.
And Jerry has a question too, somewhat related. My organization takes absolutely no fees from grants. This is between you as the business owner and your local grant deliverer. Okay. The only way that my organization would come in is if you are struggling in sales and you don't have a sales training program. Guess what? I have one. The government's going to pay you to do the program. So it's like you get our services for free, but we only focus on sales. So a lot of the examples are around, attorney or production or accounting. That would be, you would have to find resources in your local community to get those services.
Yeah. Andrew Kern asked an interesting question. I'm not sure I remember the context it was, going on at the time, but he said, can IT companies, so software and technology companies, use the H-1B visa as a reason to receive some of these grants? So now I'm going to stretch a little bit and say he's trying to bring foreigners to the United States to do more coding and build his business. Or, here we go. This must be what he's talking about. Is that foreign competition when his competitor next door is hiring foreigners to come to the United States? Does that count as foreign competition?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, the grant teams don't really know the specifics of your industry or business. If we can prove that there is a threat, okay, so maybe that's the first step where they're hiring foreign workforce. Well, what if that foreign workforce, for example, comes over with new foreign products? Okay, they're trying, believe it or not, they're trying to help you be proactive. Look for a potential red flag. Here's money to put together a strategy to make sure that red flag never happens.
Yeah.
That'd probably be a good way to look at it.
Right. And can you imagine anything we have a lot of restaurant owners on here, and Rebecca McQuiston asked, can these grants be used for domestic only businesses such as me? I'm in the restaurant industry.
Right. There's nothing on any brochure that says restaurant owners don't apply. Right. Yeah.
But you would have to have, I mean, when we talk about selling in a restaurant, could you?
Well, good point. 2 of them are around workforce. Like literally just hiring people is one of them, right? The second one is retaining your workforce. We did help a restaurant company that designed restaurants as well as provided equipment for restaurants. They obviously hired people. They have design services, and yes, that applied as well.
Yeah, maybe rolling out a new point of sale system that would automate their thing, and they need training.
Absolutely. You just described a training program on a tool. That's a wonderful use.
Okay, there you go. Jerry says exactly what I've been thinking. I think I could use all of these grants. I can make up good reasons for any of them.
Right. Well, hey, the other good news is the 5 programs don't talk to each other. I mean, there's dividing lines. So no one even knows how many you've got. There's no scorecard. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, look, my objective anytime I go into a company, of course, we try to grow their sales department. I try to get them as much money as possible. Our goal in our organization is we're cash flow positive, meaning we're going to get you more money than what we charge. And this is a great way we do that, and it helps in so many other areas besides the sales department. Andre, your question in the Q&A. Yes, I have a client today that I gave that example before. We had no idea how to be successful in Canada, no idea. And they paid for our brochures to be redone. They introduced us to resources. We found a distributor. We put in a sales tool to help us track our growth in Canada. And lo and behold, we're being successful in Canada, right? It's not complex. It's just work. But yeah, that would apply.
Childcare and children's programs. Boy, can you imagine any of these grants applying to opening a new location for their childcare business? Or
I would assume the workforce grants around
workforce
hiring,
grants. Yeah,
as well as training your workforce.
Yeah, excellent. So Nancy Bates, I hope that helps. Absolutely, we can see ways to apply these to your industry. Oh, okay. What are the associated fees in the event that you or Evergreen or anybody helps us get one of these grants? What should we expect from people who are intermediaries? And there are lots of intermediaries, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the best way to answer that, David, is every client engagement my organization has, we sit down with them to understand what pain points or challenges they have. We know the sales department. I actually audit 49 different things within everyone's sales department. You're going to have some of them. You're not going to have some of them. We put together tailored programs to really what you're missing. And honestly, you need all 49. I wish the number was 47, right? But it's not. Like, I spent 30 years in sales. I know what a sales organization needs. But the great news is once you have those 49 things, it's kind of like an athlete, right? If you're running fast, if you're jumping high, if you're doing the basics well, you're going to win much more. And then obviously, it's not hard to win when you're doing all the basics well. So that's why the grant programs love investing in this. Because, I mean, let's be frank, it is hard to do the basics well, right? That's why we're not all professional athletes, is because it's hard to do the basics well. But we got to at least improve on the basics. And then you will win more.
Okay, we are in lumbar exports, buying from Canada and U.S. mills for export to India, China, Vietnam, and other Asian countries. This is Arun. So, of course, any grants would help, but can you also help in getting cheaper or larger loans? I believe there are banks who give specific loans for lumber. There is the Export-Import Bank. Do you ever get, with regard to this export assistance, Dan, do you ever work with the Export-Import Bank or hear of any bankers who specialize in that sort of thing?
Not my organization directly. I'm sure, Arun, the first thing I would tell you is just make sure you know who your STEP resource is for your state. It sounds like you're quite successful with international sales now. That doesn't preclude you from getting grant money to be even more successful, right? Yeah. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity for that relationship, because you might be a wonderful advocate for them too, because you're already successful in international trade. So that'd be my recommendation.
All right. And I'll just add, I'm familiar with, but have not actually personally used the Import-Export Bank, which can help you with the cash flows necessary, especially when you're exporting goods from the United States. They have ways of helping you with that, Arun. So thank you for that.
Hey, Amberin in the chat. Yeah. I mean, I think you're the organization that, quite frankly, they're targeting. I love how you call yourself an old school company. I love that. I'm old school. Putting in tech to help you scale your company, address the current workforce requirements around everybody needing to know tech. I think you're a wonderful candidate to develop those skills and competencies in your business. And yes, this grant would target that.
Excellent. All right. Is there any one other thing that you want to add? Anything to wrap up, or any question you see that's really going to help us all out here?
There's a lot around, hey, this is my industry. Do I qualify? And I just want to reiterate again, it's industry agnostic. If you think about it in one way, I would recommend, if you're creating jobs and retaining jobs, then by and large, you're going to qualify. That's the thread between all of these.
Yeah.
So as long as you employ people, I think you're in pretty good shape to at least start the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent point. And I'm with you. I see all of these questions about, can it be services? Can it be digital? Can it be systems that I've installed overseas, computer systems or software I'm selling overseas? The answer is generally yes to all this stuff, right? I mean, these are grants for American companies to help you grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And think about it this way, they're taxpayer dollars. So why would the government ever say, we don't like that industry, so you can't have the grants, right? They can't really position themselves that way. So it is for everyone. This is our own taxpayer dollars coming back to help small business.
Yeah, from plumbers to IT guys to software to lumber exports to China. All right. Well, please be kind to Dan's personal cell phone number. If drop him an email first, and you can copy me on the email. Maybe one of us, between the two of us, I'm sure we can answer your questions. Boy, it's been a blast, Dan. So thank you so much for the content. I look forward to having you on again and to hearing some questions and answers from you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.